Hey, I'm Nick Armstrong, and welcome to another episode of Dear Fort Collins. Today, we are here with Robbie Moreland of Represent Fort Collins. Robbie, introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me, Nick. Yes, I'm with Represent Fort Collins, which is a group that was formed in 2017 to monitor our elections and to bring transparency to our elections in Fort Collins. So that's what we've been doing ever since then.
Robbie and I worked together on the ranked choice voting campaign, which was successful last year and actually brought together the ranked choice voting community. And the first election is 2025, right, Robbie?
That's right. November 2025 will be the first time we use ranked choice voting in Fort Collins.
So we saw that a lot of other communities that had ranked choice voting invested a lot into voter education. And you and I are also working on a team to bring a blue book, a voter guide, to Fort Collins in 2025 as well. Can you tell me about that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it just kind of seems like a natural progression from going for, if you're going to go into ranked choice voting and you're going to start asking voters, you have to now rank candidates in races where there's more than two candidates. It's no more going to be where you look out the window and say, oh, my neighbor's voting for Joe. I guess I'll vote for Joe again. You want to actually rank the candidates, so you need to know a little bit about them. And there's so many cities and states, counties around the country that do a voter guide. And it's about time we do too. And when I say voter guide, what I'm talking about is not the blue book like you get from the state that only has state and county issues in it, or this cute little county thing I got, notice of elections from the county, that has 2 of the 5 ballot measures in it from the city of Fort Collins. But I'm talking about a full up voter guide that has all of our issues we'll be voting on and all of the candidates, and one place where you can just thumb through it and see who all the candidates are, find their website, find out something about them. And we've never had something like that before.
It seems like we do have a lot of different resources in the community. I mean, the chamber has their thing. League of Women Voters has a forum. There's all of the, real estate board has theirs. I remember as a candidate filling out no end of surveys. There was like 20 different questionnaires that I had to stop and fill out. Like, I just want to go out and talk to my neighbors. Talk to me about the importance of, from a candidate's standpoint, having a guidebook like this. Why is it valuable for candidates?
Well, for a number of reasons. As you well know, we have really low contribution numbers or rates in this city. So I can only donate $75 to a candidate, and I can only donate $100 to a mayoral candidate. And so it's very little money that we let our candidates raise. And with that low of a money, how do they spend it where they can reach the most amount of voters? And it's really hard for them. I mean, if a mayoral candidate doesn't reach enough to talk to every single candidate, every single voter in town, then they're missing out on getting their message across. And voters aren't going in with all the information that they have. So I think it's really important that as a candidate, you have the ability to touch everybody who might be voting in your district or all of your potential constituents with your message.
One of the cool inclusions that you would put into the guide is the map of the districts and how to find your specific district that you're living in. Has it been your experience that different districts participate more in particular elections, or is it just kind of across the board that we have a voter turnout what it is across the city?
I don't know the science behind it, but I suspect it's kind of a citywide thing. It's actually across the whole country that there's very low participation rates in municipal elections. There just is. And I think when people have more information right at their fingertips, that they're more likely to vote. And they're more likely to be excited about voting because now they can see a candidate's face, the candidate's statement. They can look at their website and how many times have you even heard while you were out running, Nick, there's a race, there's an election coming up? Because our elections were in April before. And people are like, April, I just got done with Easter baskets. I didn't know there was an election.
My favorite is when they ask me if I'm running this time around. I'm like, no, it's just for even numbered districts.
Right.
What's a district? What is that? I think that the city can go a long way with some simple voter education, and the guidebook is something I'm super excited to help out with and to see come to fruition. I know you're working on a number of different initiatives as well, Robbie. Can you tell us about some of the other stuff that it's on your plate?
Sure. Well, I'd also like to see the city do what Boulder and Denver are doing, which is a dollar for dollar matching program for candidates. And so I think this is also important for people to run for office, because a lot of people, when you ask, hey, you have some great ideas, why don't you run for office? They go, oh, raising money. I don't want to raise money. That's awful. I just can't even stand the thought of it. But if there's a dollar for dollar matching program that would encourage them to run for office because they don't have to raise near as much to compete, that would be super helpful. And the behind the scenes beauty of that is if the city is participating in helping candidates run, the city can also cap spending. So they can say no candidate who participates in our dollar for dollar matching program is going to spend more than X amount. And so in the city of Boulder, there's no candidate right now that spends over $20,000. So that's amazing. In Boulder, where you can just imagine the candidate races would get up there in the hundreds and $200,000, but they're capped at $20,000. And so now everybody's on an equal playing field to get their message across.
What are the functional groups in the city that create some of these dynamics or these processors or these systems that you're looking to shape?
Are you talking about the Election Code Committee?
That's where I was going.
Okay. Well, there is a not very well-known committee of the city council called the Election Code Committee. It started around, I believe, in 2015, and it consists of 3 members of the city council. And so they're responsible for reviewing election complaints and upgrading or updating our election code. And so every time we have a new election, they seat a new election code committee that will meet for a couple of years and decide if we need some changes to our election code. So I'm pretty involved in that. I go to their meetings when they happen, and I suggest changes based on what we've seen in the previous election. I have a lot of suggestions for next time. And adding that dollar for dollar matching program for the candidates would be one of those things. Getting a voter guide going in the city starting in 2025 would be another one of those things. And I also think that the city could really benefit by having a quasi-judicial election oversight board or commission that kind of takes the conflicts of interest away from the city attorney's office and the city clerk's office in overseeing our elections, and puts it with a group of residents made up of everyday people who want to be involved in our elections, as well as retired attorneys and judges who might have better insight into interpreting the legalese of our election code.
So sort of like a code board or a code committee that's looking at these things. That's a neat idea.
I imagine this board being able to adjudicate election complaints instead of just the city attorney doing it. I imagine this board perhaps reviewing campaign finance reports to make sure that they're following our city code, because right now there is no documented or legal oversight of our election code. It's left up to residents who want to go find campaign finance reports, read through them, interpret the election code, and we're not lawyers, and then write complaints. So I think that that should be in the hands of this election oversight board to just really, and not have any city council members sitting on it, not have the city attorney sit on it, but actual residents and maybe people who can interpret law.
Well, I can say as a candidate, it was really helpful when you emailed me and said, hey, you might want to make this note over here or issue a correction on this particular thing so you don't run afoul of the thing. And I was so thankful that somebody was actually, because you don't get that as a candidate. Like the assumption is like, oh, you know what you're doing, you know how you're operating, you know what the rules are and all the rest of the stuff. You're relying really heavily on the city clerk and on maybe somebody who had run before or your campaign manager. In my case, it was just me. I didn't have a campaign manager. It was me. So I was asking, city clerk, city attorney's office. And then you leaned in and said, hey, maybe do this particular thing. I was like, this is great. So it's such an interesting way how our democracy functions in Fort Collins that it's sort of, even from the candidate level, pieced together experience by experience by experience. Can you give an example of something that this quasi-judicial committee would be tasked with? Right
now, when a candidate fills out their their campaign finance reports, and they have to do like 6 of them during an election cycle, there's nobody looking at those. Literally, the city clerk stamps them and files them away. So you just know that they were turned in on time. There's nobody to go through them. And so I have been teaming up with some members of the League of Women Voters, just some residents who are friends, and we go through those campaign finance reports. I think that it'd be a service to the community if we all knew that those campaign finance reports were actually being looked at by someone who was, had the job of doing that on a board. Like, this is the responsibility of the community to do it, instead of just hoping somebody from the community will do it.
Yeah.
Let's document, let's put it in writing that we have a board that does that. And it's not meant to scare candidates. It's meant to help candidates. It's meant to guide them through the process, because I can just imagine the first time you run and you see that spreadsheet of all the things you have to fill out. That's got to be daunting. And it'd be really nice to have a commission say, we're going to help you through this. The goal is not for us to find opportunities to write complaints about candidates. It's for us to find opportunities to help candidates and assure the community and the voting public that we are providing oversight. The city is watching what's happening in our elections.
Well, it's an easy way to identify gaps in our processes and our systems. So one of the great examples that came up during this last cycle of the Election Code Committee was the electronic billboards, and that there were particular donations that had been made for this service that were quantified by the vendor, but were actually in market value a lot higher than what the quantified value had been that was reported and required to be reported. And so that then became a change that the Election Code Committee could focus in on. And as a candidate too, yes, as you say, it's very daunting to have to go through and record not just the donations. So you record all your donations on your campaign finance reports. You put all your expenditures on there as well. And anything that is an in-kind or other things like that goes on there as well. And so over a series of these reports, if somebody donates to you twice, or if somebody donates to, $76 instead of $75, you might not catch it, because there are so many, especially as you know, having to collect so many of these donations in order to make a meaningful campaign in today's dollars. It's pretty tricky. So I was really thankful, as I said, to have somebody who had some oversight into it and say, catching an error here or there so that you don't run afoul, because no candidate wants to go in there and muck up the works. And the city, on the other hand, definitely appreciates your efforts, because it highlights errors in the process or gaps in the systems and processes that exist. So thank you for that, first of all. And second of all, how can a citizen get involved in what you are doing, and how can they learn more about what you're working on and maybe help out?
Well, anyone who's interested in auditing campaign finance reports, I mean, I just can't imagine there's people who actually want to do that, but we do have a team together that are auditing the ones this time. And then from here on out, you're always welcome. You could join the League of Women Voters election reform team. They're the first people I call when I'm looking for auditors who might want to get involved in auditing the campaign finance reports. And hopefully we can get this election oversight board up and running, and people will apply to be on that board if elections interest them.
And if you're wanting to attend the ECC meetings, the Election Code Committee meetings, you can do so on Zoom. You can do so in person. I found that it was really easy to participate and even to submit questions or comments in advance. But going in person, because it's such a smaller group of the council, and a small audience that's in participation as well. And the city clerk, I think, is there, and the attorney as well. You're speaking more or less informally to the folks that are helping to put in stopgap measures or fix the code or, adjust things to make them more fair. I found it was really an easy participation process compared to going to speak at city council, which is often really intimidating because you have that audience that's being recorded and all the rest of the stuff that's happening.
Oh, absolutely. And there's never 2 hours of public comments leading up to the Election Code Committee meeting, because there's usually 2 or 3 of us that go watch because we're super geeky about elections and we just love hearing what's happening and what changes they're going to make to the code. But after this election, the new council will be sworn in January. And then probably within 60 days after that, they'll start the Election Code Committee meetings again. And so look for March, April, maybe, for those to start up again. And then they will decide at that time what day of the week they're going to have them on, what time they're going to have them. But yes, they publish that on the city website, and then you can just zoom in, or you can walk in and you can provide your own comments, or you can just sit back and watch how it goes. They're usually a 90-minute meeting.
Awesome. Robbie, how else can we get involved, and where can we learn more about what you do and how to get involved with your efforts?
Well, you could reach me. I can give you my email address if you want. It's my last name, Moreland01@gmail.com. And let me know if you're interested in election reforms. And I'd love to have more people join in the effort to save democracy through better elections.
And you can check out the mock voter guide at focovotes.com. That's where we're hosting it right now, just to have you check it out. It is a mock guide, so make sure you do your own research. It's not an official document from the city. A team of us, a bunch of us are multi-partisan volunteers who are super passionate and geeky about elections, as Robbie said, and making sure that things are as fair as possible, and that you are as educated as possible when you go to vote, and that you feel empowered. And that's the entire goal behind it. So focovotes.com is the right where to find it, and you can contact Robbie there as well. So Robbie, any lingering words of advice that you'd like to share with the audience?
No, but if you are interested in elections, please get in touch with me. I'd love to have the help, and watch for your own voter guide starting in 2025. And I hope you'll all do what I'm going to do. With the advent of ranked choice voting, I'm putting every candidate's sign in my yard, because I want you to rank them all.
You have the busiest yard in all of Fort Collins, all of the signs.
You get to vote for everyone this time. Just rank them.
Awesome. Robbie, thank you so much for joining us today. And for more amazing stories from in and around Fort Collins and interviews with experts just like Robbie, keep tuned to the Dear Fort Collins podcast and download us wherever podcasts are found. We can't wait to see you next time.